This is the BYD Sealion 7, the brand new electric SUV from the behemoth that is BYD, also known as the world's largest electric vehicle company. And in this episode, I'm going to tell you why I think this might be the Hover's best of both worlds when it comes to electric SUVs. Now, we have very limited time to film this particular episode, so I'm going to try and stick to the funnest facts that I can tell you about this particular car. Welcome to the Fully Charged Show.
Try everything electric at our exhibitions in Australia, Canada and the UK. Next up, London.
So for those who may not be familiar with BYD, I can tell you that you won't be familiar for that much longer because A, I'm going to give you some fun facts, and B, because you're going to see so many BYDs on the roads in every part of the globe. But a few fun facts for you. So BYD, it stands for Build Your Dreams. They are based in China. And today they are the third largest automotive company in the world. So third behind Toyota and VW. In terms of electric vehicles, last year alone, they sold 4.27 million new energy vehicles. So that does include hybrids as well. And today, 1 in 4 new energy vehicles that are sold across the world are a BYD. They are absolutely mammoth. But in terms of the BYD vehicles that are available here in the UK, fully electric, I should say, there is the Atto 3, the Dolphin, the Seal, and now the Sealion 7. And in terms of what's the difference between a Seal and a Sealion, well, they're both part of the pinniped family, which in Latin means fin-footed. And they differ primarily in terms of ear structure and how they move across land. So a Sealion uses all 4 legs to move across land, whereas a Seal will use its belly. And in car terms, a Seal, think of it as a Model 3 competitor, and a Sealion 7, think of that as a Model Y competitor. Let's talk stats. Thankfully, the BYD Sealion 7 lineup is really straightforward. There are 3 variants. There is the Comfort, Design, and Excellence. The Comfort is rear-wheel drive, the Design and Excellence are both all-wheel drive. Now, in terms of price, that means that the Comfort starts at £46,990 and the Excellence goes up to £58,990. Or in terms of PCP, that's £489 a month up to £589 per month. And what does that price get you? Well, in the case of the Comfort and Design, 82.5 kilowatt hours of LFP Blade batteries, and the Excellent you'll get 91.3 kilowatt hours Blade LFP batteries. And in terms of range, that means 300, 283 and 312 miles of range, respectively. Charging speeds, Comfort and Design will give you a max charging speed of 150 kilowatt DC charging, meaning 10 to 80% in 32 minutes. Meanwhile, the Excellence will give you 10 to 80% in just 24 minutes, thanks to 230 kilowatts of DC charging.
We're really excited to partner with Duracell Energy to showcase their amazing renewable energy solutions. If you want to reduce your energy bills and join the renewable energy transition, installing home battery storage and solar panels at home is a great way to start. Duracell Energy's ecosystem of products typically partners with solar panels, but they can be just as effective without it, particularly for electric vehicle owners or anyone looking to take control of their energy. And with Duracell Energy's Platinum Homeowner offer, viewers can get a custom service that pairs you with top quality products and the best installers in your area. Duracell Energy's batteries, inverters and EV chargers work together on one easy-to-use app. With features like dynamic tariff integration and grid services, you'll be able to maximise your return. Ready to get started? You can get your quote today. And don't forget, we're also giving away a Duracell Energy Bunny in every episode. Just answer the question about Fully Charged by following the link in the description. Good luck!
So just a bit of context as to how big this thing is. It is 4,830 millimeters long, which means that it's very similarly sized to Polestar 3, Polestar 4, Tesla Model Y, Audi Q6 e-tron, that kind of segment. The BYD design language is all about being inspired by the ocean. Now, of course, the naming convention of all of the BYD lineup is a dead giveaway to that ocean inspiration. And there's a couple of, quite subtle nods to that oceanic quality. So some of those swoopy, I guess they'd typically be described as muscular lines, but they almost have a feel of what happens when a wave comes across the shore and shapes the sand, and what shape is in the sand is left. And you see that in some of these quite sculptural lines, quite fluid lines, like this one at the rear there. And then there are some slightly more subtle nods. So there are these little scales that appear in those rear lights, which I think is quite a nice nod to that oceanic quality. But really interestingly, this car has been designed by a guy called Wolfgang Egger. So he joined BYD in 2017. He's based at their global design studio in Shenzhen. But he has a history of working for brands like Seat, like Audi. He's led design teams at Lamborghini. And I think that's really fascinating because when you look at this car, there's a degree of familiarity to it. You can tell that it's been inspired by existing vehicles. There's a bit of a Porsche quality to it. There's even, I think personally, a bit of a Evoque feel at the rear. And perhaps, and this might be a little bit of a controversial opinion, but there might be a bit of Lamborghini inspiration at the rear too. I've got to say that I genuinely really love this design. I think it has the qualities of being an electric SUV without being too enormous and imposing. It's very sleek in feel. But there is one thing that I find a tiny bit jarring, and it'll be interesting to see if you also think the same. And that is these wheel arches. So despite the fact that we've got the ocean-inspired lines and quite swoopy lines, these are very square. And they sort of have the effect of feeling like, you know, you've slightly over-penciled your eyebrows. Now, here you can see the boot in action with all of our camera equipment. There is 520 litres of space in there, much more when you lay the seats flat as well. And there's actually 3.3 kilowatts of vehicle to load capability here as well. So making this a really ideal companion for, say, a camping trip. I would say that whilst this is quite a lot of space and you're going to have absolutely no trouble getting a few suitcases in there, it is bizarrely narrow given that we have got quite a wide vehicle. So there's actually a huge amount of space which you can't use inside this boot. But regardless, it is still pretty sizable. This interior, I have to say, feels extremely luxurious. All of the materials and finishes have a very refined quality to them. The seat is so squishy and wide, it feels like sitting in a proper sofa rather than stepping into a car. The only weird quirk I will say is that the seat itself is very long, and whilst I'm 5'3", that's not incredibly short, it's quite average for a woman in the UK. And it does feel like the seat is a little bit too long, so I do feel like I'm very small, sort of perched on this enormous chair. But it's nice. It's really nice, and I think much nicer given the fact that this is not at that kind of north of 60 price point where you expect those things, but it comes as a bit more of a surprise and delight given that the price is south of 60. There are a couple of other things that are really noteworthy. So for example, there is a 50-watt wireless charging pad here. That is absolutely enormous. It's so enormous, in fact, that they have included an air vent there to make sure that your phone is cooled and doesn't overheat. But, you know, phone battery anxiety, no more with charging speeds of that speed. Of course, when it comes to electric vehicles from BYD, we expect them to come absolutely laden with technology, and that is very much true here. So there are three things that the driver can see. There is, of course, the main infotainment screen that can actually rotate through 90 degrees, so you can have it in portrait mode, should you so wish. There is a screen in front of the driver which has the full map that you can see, as well as customizable information. So whatever you want as a driver to see there, you can customize it. And there is a head-up display as well. Now, I personally, as someone who is 5'3", as mentioned, I find head-up display really helpful because you have that screen slightly further ahead of you rather than feeling like it is really close. So anyone who's a little on the shorter side, I'd always recommend a head-up display. There are over 130 customizable colours that you can have for the interior ambient lighting. So of course I'm going to select pink because that's really fun. You won't be able to see it in this lighting because it is so beautifully bright and sunny today. There are lots of lovely places to put all of your bits and bobs, so some nice door pockets. I love having one of these spaces just underneath the sort of centre console. Great place to put your purse or your wallet or your handbag or what have you. And there is an absolutely enormous thing here. I'm just going to show you just how deep this is. That is like all the way up to my elbow, so handy. So this is the back. We've actually moved the driver's position into videographer Chris's position. He is 6 foot, and we needed to do that because, you know, frankly in my position, it was not representative of what you'd experience. But what you can see is that there is absolutely oodles of space here. There is no danger of my knees touching the seat in front of you. There is so much space here, and there's the same commitment to having that really, really refined feel. So lovely finishes on the doors, for example, heated seats for the passengers as well. Now, a couple of quirks that I would point out again, and first is that because we have quite a coupe shape to this vehicle, there is not perhaps as much rear headroom as you might expect. However, because there is this huge panoramic windscreen, you get that perception of space even if you perhaps don't have the reality of space. And because you can adjust the seats anyway, you can sit in a slightly more reclined position and you're not going to be impacted by that rear headroom either. The other thing that I would mention is that these door panels are quite high, which is not a problem for me as a grown-up person, but if you do have little ones, they may struggle to see out of them, which is a bit of a problem for motion sickness sufferers. And that may be exacerbated by the fact that the seats in front of you are quite large, which may inhibit children being able to see down the side and making sure that they can see the road. So if you do have little ones who are susceptible to motion sickness, I'd highly recommend that you go and take this out for a test drive and see what the impact is like for yourself. Now, BYD, as well as being known for being the third largest automotive company on the planet, are also extremely well known for their battery capability. And in fact, I've got another fact for you. There are 120,000 research and development engineers employed by BYD, which is absolutely just enormous. And so it's no surprise that they have one of the world's leading batteries, which is the BYD Blade Battery. Now, if you've heard of this, it's probably because you've seen a YouTube video of the nail going into the battery pack and it being absolutely fine. But the thing that's really exciting about the BYD Blade Battery is that it's LFP chemistry, so lithium iron phosphate. And lithium iron phosphate is exciting because it has greater thermal stability and typically longer lifetime than the NMC alternatives, although it is slightly less energy dense. And the consequence of that is that you've got to be much more innovative with how you squeeze as much energy into the overall amount of battery that you have on board the vehicle. Now, BYD have tackled that by doing something called cell-to-body technology. So typically you would have a battery cell that sits in a module, which then sits in a pack, which then sits within the vehicle. So loads and loads of layers that you have to contend with. BYD, however, have cell-to-body, so bypass all of those layers, you have the battery cells and they sit directly in the body, so much so that they actually form a structural component of the vehicle. One last thing for the chassis nerds amongst you. So this has double wishbone suspension at the front and multi-link geometry suspension at the rear, which of course that kind of suspension is only interesting if you've got a really, really good control system pulling that all together. And in the case of BYD, they have something called the ITAC system, which is not only quite fun to say, but also stands for Intelligent Torque Adaptive Control. So it can adapt that torque in a really, really clever and sophisticated way, something that is definitely worth playing around with once you get behind the wheel of this vehicle. So what's left to say? Well, I think first of all we need to acknowledge just how many omissions we've made. There are so many things that we have not had the chance to get into in this vehicle, and I really hope that we can spend a bit more meaningful time with this vehicle in the future. There's so much more to say about it. Second of all, I think we need to acknowledge that this car park certainly doesn't do this beautiful vehicle justice. But I think the most important thing to say is that we started this episode by asking the question, is this the Hovis best of both worlds vehicle when it comes to electric SUVs? And the answer is overwhelmingly yes. This is gloriously luxurious and yet doesn't come with that super high premium price tag you would expect for that level of luxury. And in that sense, it is absolutely the Hovis best of both worlds. I cannot wait to spend a bit more time with this vehicle. Can't wait to hear what you think either. But in the meantime, please do like and subscribe. And if you have been, thank you for watching.